Hi guys, welcome to Spark IB. Today we'll be learning Unit 2, Atomic Structure, and we'll be looking into 2.1, the nuclear atom. In the first half of the video, we'll look into the different models of the atom, which include Dalton's model, J.J. Thomson's model, Ernest Rutherford's model, and Niels Bohr's model of the atom. So let's begin. Dalton's model of the atom. John Dalton in the early 19th century observed that hydrogen and oxygen always chemically combined in fixed ratios to form compounds. Hence, he proposed that all matter is composed of tiny indivisible particles called atoms. Atoms cannot be created or destroyed. Atoms of the same element are alike in every way. Atoms of different elements are different, and that atoms can combine together to form in small numbers to form molecules. This model helps us explain and understand how elements react to form new substances called compounds. So what is a compound? A compound is basically a substance that is made by chemically combining two or more elements in fixed ratios. It has different properties from its constituent elements. So what this means is that iron sulfide, for example, is a compound, and it's made up of its constituent elements iron and sulfur. However, although iron is magnetic, iron sulfide isn't. So this is the difference in properties. Rutherford's model of the atom. Ernest Rutherford fired alpha particles at a gold foil. Alpha particles are nothing but helium nuclei which have 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Therefore, they are positively charged. The alpha particles are emitted by unstable nuclei which have too many protons. According to Thomson's model, most rays should pass straight through the gold foil. However, a few of the rays bounced back or were slightly deflected. So let's see what this means. As you can see over here, there are 3 cases. In the first case, the alpha particles pass through the atom straight. What this means is that they were undeflected, and that is because they have passed through empty space, which means that a majority of the atom consists of empty space. The second case is where the alpha particles were slightly deflected from the nucleus. So this means that the nucleus is dense and positively charged center. However, it is very small when compared to the size of the entire atom. Therefore, the particles were only slightly deflected because like charges repel. And the third case is where the alpha particle was completely deflected and turned back in the opposite direction. So this is because the alpha particle has almost directly hit the positive nucleus, and due to the high charge of the positive nucleus, it repels the positively charged alpha particle completely. Now we will be looking into subatomic particles. The atoms are made up of subatomic particles called protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons together are present in the nucleus, and they are collectively referred to as nucleons. Protons and neutrons have the same mass almost, and that is equal to the hydrogen nucleus's mass because hydrogen only has one proton. Electrons have almost negligible mass, however, they have equal and opposite charges to protons. The proton has a relative mass of 1 and has a relative charge of positive 1, whereas the electron has a negative charge of -1, exactly opposite to that of a proton. However, it has a relative mass that is much smaller than that of the proton. Hence, its mass is almost negligible. Neutrons have the same relative mass as protons, which is 1, and have a relative charge of 0. Niels Bohr pictured the hydrogen atom as a solar system with an electron moving in an orbit or energy level around a positively charged nucleus. The electrostatic force of attraction between the orbiting electrons and the protons prevents the electrons from leaving the atom. So let's see the size of the nuclear radius and atomic radius. The nuclear radius has a size or a radius of 10 to the power minus 15 meters. That is 1 femtometer. And the atomic radius has a length of 10 to the power minus 10 meters, which is 1 angstrom. So you can see that there is a large difference between the size of the atomic radius and the nuclear radius. Neutral protons are necessary in the nuclei with more than one proton, because otherwise when there are many protons, they tend to repel each other due to the positive charge. Hence, a neutron binds the protons together.
Atomic mass number is the sum of number of protons and neutrons in the nucleus. So mass number is equal to number of protons plus number of neutrons. Atomic number is number of protons in the nucleus. Since atoms are electrically neutral, the number of proton is also equal to the number of electron. So here A denotes the atomic mass number of the element, Z denotes the atomic number of the element, and X denotes the element symbol. Atomic mass units, which is also known as AMU, is the 1/12 of the mass of carbon-12 atom in its ground state. This is used to express masses of atomic particles. 1 AMU is equal to 1.66054002 into 10 to the power minus 27 kgs. It seems likely that the neutron's role in the atomic nucleus is glued to the proton together so that the electrostatic repulsion of like charges does not make the nucleus fall apart. Certainly, it is possible to have atoms of the same element with different number of neutrons. These are called isotopes. So, isotopes are the same element with the same number of protons but the different number of neutrons. So, if you see in this picture, these are nothing but the isotopes of hydrogen. So in the first one, protium, there's one proton, whereas in deuterium there's one proton and one neutron, whereas in tritium there's two neutron and one proton. On the whole, the properties of isotopes are identical to one another. There may be slightly different physical properties such as density or rate of diffusion. Some isotopes are radioactive and emit radiation such as alpha, beta, and gamma. These are called radioisotopes. Isotopes may also react with different rates. An example of this is the uptake of deuterium by hydrogenated compounds. Separation of isotopes. The separation of isotopes is carried out using different rates of diffusion. For example, uranium has two main isotopes, uranium-235 and uranium-238. The 235 isotope is needed for nuclear power, but usually only occurs at a very low percentage and must be separated from other isotopes. This is carried out by reacting the uranium with fluoride, making uranium hexafluoride, UF6. The uranium hexafluoride is then passed through many centrifugages, whereas the heavier uranium hexafluoride made from uranium-238 does not pass through as quickly as the uranium hexafluoride made from 235. Actually, after passing through many centrifugages, the final product is pure uranium hexafluoride containing only uranium-235. It can be then chemically reduced back to pure uranium or more often to uranium oxide pellets for its final destination in the nuclear power industry. Relative atomic mass. For elements which have more than one isotope, the measured relative atomic mass of a sample will be the average mass of all the isotope in the sample. Usually the relative proportion of natural occurring elements do not vary throughout the world, and so it is possible to calculate the average mass of one atom of an element from isotope and the abundance data. These average books are usually given in the periodic table and data books. Isotopes have a huge variety of uses from medical to industrial, from nuclear energy to fire alarms. Carbon-14 is used in radiocarbon dating. Cobalt-60 is used in hospital as a beta emission source in the treatment of cancer, and iodine-131 and iodine-125 are used in medical traces. In several conditions, the body can be scanned for problems using iodine, which is easily taken up by the body and transported through the system. The isotope 131 and iodine 125 are easy to detect and short-lived in the body.
Mass spectrometer. Mass spectrometry is a technique that helps us measure the mass to charge ratio of charged particles. It is used to determine the masses of the particles present in a sample of a compound or a molecule and helps us determine the elements present in it. It can also tell us the chemical structures of molecules such as peptides and other chemical compounds. There are 5 main steps for mass spectrometry. The first step is vaporization. In vaporization, the sample that is injected into the tube is heated up so that it becomes a gas, allowing it to spread across the mass spectrometer. The second step is ionization, where the sample is hit with electrons using an electron gun, changing the sample so that it only has positively charged ions. These positively charged ions are attracted to the magnetic fields, allowing the mass spectrometer to work. The third step is acceleration. Acceleration is where the positively charged ions are accelerated through an electric field of negatively charged plates, which the ions are attracted to allow them to be tested in the next stages. The fourth step is separation. In separation, the ions are moved along an electric field and then a magnetic field. The atoms with a higher mass to charge ratio won't be affected much by the electric field and directly move to the magnetic field, while those with a lower mass to charge ratio will be affected more and have a higher angle and bend towards the electric plates. This is because they have more mass compared to their simple charge. The fifth step is detection. In detection, there is a detector at the end of the mass spectrometer, and when an ion hits the detector, a single electric current is produced at that location, which is then multiplied many times so a computer can notice it. The current produced is always proportional to the amount of ions of that specific type hitting the location. Molecules and atoms of the same type will always hit a specific location of their own, hence we are able to detect the atomic size or the atomic mass.
Thanks for watching this video. This is Muthu Abhi
And Varshita.
If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to Spark IB.